Isn't it amazing how much power the police believe they have over us? I mean, don't get me wrong, they can, within the law, make us obey orders under threat of arrest. They can even give us restrictions to our everyday behaviour and movements, which in reality should only ever be allowed to be restricted by a court. But they do, and they get away with it. These restrictions are called bail conditions, criminal behaviour orders, community protection notices, and I'm sure there are other names that they use as well. And to be fair, in some circumstances, the conditions are of a necessity for the protection of others or to prevent further offences occurring. If, of course, you are on bail for an offence in the first place, or you've had committed an offence in the first place in order to receive a CBO or CPN, which we know isn't always the case, as the police will give you bail conditions over incidents they already know will go no further, simply to inconvenience you, or give you a CBO or CPN knowing whatever they had on you was a flop in the court. And this is the only other way that they can teach you a lesson, because there's no oversight to the conditions that they give you. The police, in their ever infinite wisdom, decided that they should try to place conditions on a man in London via community protection order, which banned him from entering the entire borough of Hackney. The restrictions also prevented him from being found near residential areas in Hackney or being within 20 metres of a bus stop or a train station. Now, you may be asking yourself, what had this guy done? Was he so antisocial that the police had to step in and infringe on his human rights as the only way to protect the public? Was he a criminal causing damage to property or abusing people? Well, no. Actually, he was caught filming a police stop and search. So, in other words, protecting another member of the community. You see how much they hate to be spotted abusing people's rights? In fact, the man was known to police, not for being a criminal, or so the info I found suggests, but rather because he has previously filed complaints to the police directly around police misconduct in Hackney, and often records police carrying out measures like stop and searches, which is completely legal, by the way. The National Police Chiefs Council have said so themselves. Not that that matters to the police on the ground. In the man's community protection notice, which was handed to the man by the copper that he filmed, although it's unclear if he was handed the notice at the time or at a later date, he was banned from returning to Shoreditch between the hours of Thursday, midnight, until Sunday at 23:59, banned him from being within 20 metres of bus stops and train stations, being in possession of any open containers that could be used for begging, or being in possession of more than one phone. Liberty Human Rights Group has said that the man has no previous criminal convictions and is not homeless, which begs the question why he was banned from being in possession of any open containers that could be used for begging, or for that matter, why the police believe that they can ban anybody from owning more than one mobile phone. That's pretty much like saying, in order to crack down on crime, the public are only allowed to own one pair of trainers. This will help us more quickly identify and eliminate suspects of crimes. Can you imagine having to chuck all but one pair of shoes away because the police tell you to? Now again, if it's clear that a certain order would be for the protection of someone or something, such as a rape suspect not being allowed to approach the victim, then I'm on board with that. There needs to be protection in place for victims. But when the police abuse these tools as weapons to simply teach people a lesson and infringe on their human rights simply to cause an inconvenience or teach somebody a lesson, then even the mere act of drafting that kind of order should in itself be a criminal offence. Liberty Human Rights Group decided to get involved with the man's plight and challenged the Metropolitan Police over their decision to issue the community protection notice on the grounds that many of the conditions were unreasonable and went against the man's human rights by violating his privacy and freedom of expression with a series of intrusive sanctions. Among other legal arguments, Liberty said the terms of the community protection notice breached the client's right to human dignity, privacy and freedom of expression, and they requested that the CPN be scrapped immediately. On Tuesday the 12th of July, the day before the first hearing was due to take place for the man, the police agreed to cancel the CPN and dropped all the sanctions against him. Liberty's lawyer, Lara Ten Caton, said, "We should all be free to walk around our neighbourhoods without being detained by local police officers. Police powers are being used far too broadly, and in this case, illegitimately. We are pleased that the Met Police have finally dropped this unreasonable CPN against our client, which has interfered with his rights to privacy and freedom of expression. The measures enforced by community protection notices often amount to little more than a ban on begging or a ploy to try and move the problem away. In recent months, people have been banned from even carrying open cups, and in this case from entering an entire borough in London in certain hours unless our client has a pre-arranged appointment. This U-turn from the Metropolitan Police should send a crucial message to all police forces that they must stop criminalising people without evidence. The chance will be a fine thing. The issuing of disproportionate community protection notices is very worrying at any time, but even more so now. By ripping up the Human Rights Act, the government and state bodies are trying to make themselves untouchable. We must remain vigilant and hold those in power to account." You see, the power these cretinous fuckpigs have over people's lives is incredible. Considering they are simply there to identify if an offence has been committed and then investigate, they sure do love to dish out the punishment for people, even on people carrying out lawful activities, simply because the police don't want to get caught out on camera abusing their positions or a member of the public's rights. Like I said, can you imagine if police said you can only have one pair of shoes in the interest of crime prevention and safety? I know what I'd tell them to go and do. The problem is that so many, in fact too many people, simply hear this and say, well, if he wasn't filming the police causing a nuisance of himself, then this wouldn't have happened. And yet completely overlook the fact the police dropped every sanction imposed, and overlooking the fact that it could have been one of their family members who was being stopped and searched unlawfully, or worse still, Wayne cousined, you know what I mean there, without me having to say it, and somebody with a camera films it and protects them. But that is the mentality of the cop-sucking, boot-licking idiots of this world. Back the blue till it happens to you, as they say. Anyway, nice try, Metropolitan Police. Maybe next time try and stick within the law and within human rights. Now, talking of restrictions, bail restrictions, community protection notice restrictions, you know, all the kind of things that the police can put on you without having to go and speak to a court first, who should be the only people that can remove your liberties and your rights for any more than, say, 48 hours. I have a court judgment from the High Court about bail conditions, and it happens to be a police constable who has, shall we say, argued against some bail conditions that he has been given by his former colleagues, and he won his appeal, which is quite disturbing, to be fair, but it was in the High Court. Now, this particular video, what I'm talking about now, this particular incident, I'm going to do in a video at some point during this week. It will be like the video I done before when I read through the judgment, the court judgment, and gave you the information about Bibba Henry and Nicole Smallman's, the people that photographed their bodies. Okay, when I went into more detail about what was said in court, well, this will be the same kind of video to that. And I'll be breaking it down and explaining it in more detail about why I said in this video that the police shouldn't be allowed to make these restrictions on us, and the court should be the only ones that make those restrictions. And I will explain further why later in the week when I put that video out. So keep your eyes open for that one. It will be chucked in amongst the reports. I don't know when it's going to go out yet, but you'll just have to watch every video to find it.